Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please, we're going to start our meeting. And Council Member Kirk Rathfield, can you verify that we have a quorum present?
Yes, sir, we do.
Quorum being present, I now declare this meeting open. And I'm going to ask Mr. Lonnie Waters if he will lead us in invocation, please.
Lord, as we gather in to conduct this work session for the city, we just ask you to bless everyone here. And Lord, as the heat is outside, we ask you to watch over all of our employees. They work very hard out, and we just don't want them to overheat. Lord, we ask you to watch over them. Lord, as we continue on through this service, we ask you for your blessings and guidance in all these matters. Amen.
Council Member Ann Snavy, would you lead us in a pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, you have in front of you our published agenda. I will entertain a motion at this time that we adopt the agenda as presented to you. I need a second, please.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is adopted. Under new business, before we start, I'm going to tell all of you that we will have a different format when it comes to a public hearing. We will have a public hearing on every item that we have. Those will be separate. I will open a public hearing for each item, and then we'll close that public hearing, and then we'll open one for the next item. And I think this will keep all of us cleaner so that those who are here for one thing can see when we get to that and then do what they want to do. All right, so at this point, I'm going to open a public hearing to request to rezone parcel JA03.073.001 and JA03128, located between 561 and 641 Hood Road, Jasper, Georgia, from R1 residential to C2 general commercial. And we will ask our development manager, Lonnie Waters, and Shauna Coleman, our planner, to bring that to us.
Mayor and council, on this item, the city has used the comprehensive planning, city ordinances, and the future land use development map. And staff recommendation is based on the analysis of application using the standards and criteria found in section 94-246 of the zoning ordinance. Staff recommends not approving the request to rezone the property from R1 to C2. Should the mayor and council approve the rezoning request, it is expected that the applicant adhere to minimum standards of the zoning ordinance and or consider restricting the uses within the C2 permitted use section to minimize any negative impact on the immediate property owners. And we have, all the advertisements have been done, signs have been posted on the property. We have had a couple of people with planning and zoning come and make comments against the project. And the applicants are here now to make a statement to you if you so wish.
Thank you. Mr. Greenway? Yes. I understand this is your project, sir?
Mine and my brothers.
Your brother. Would you please step forward, identify yourselves to everyone here, and give us your idea, your concept of what you're going to be doing with this property.
Okay. I'm Kai Ritz. John Greenway. There's one more Parker, but he's not here. We would like to hit your standards for your C2. We would like to build an attractive building, hitting your masonry standards, with landscaping, to address the property owners that may be concerned. We would be willing to leave a buffer. Those subject properties are already adjacent. to industrial and commercial properties. We don't see that the footprint we would leave would be any different than the one already there. A storage facility has a very minimal traffic footprint. You're talking maybe 10 cars a day, you know, very minimal. Again, with the buffers, we're willing to leave a buffer. And also we plan on the adjacent 20 acres to try to do something with housing there. So to hit more of the city's planning. Storage does serve housing density. With the planned housing coming into Jasper, there will be a need. As far as I know, all the storage units around here are at capacity. We can't build them fast enough.
And this property, it says it's outside the district of the C2. Keep in mind, it used to be in, it was taken out and put into R1 for the developers, Reese, there's a few of them, and they went bankrupt on the property. So it used to be C2, and then it was changed to residential. Reese, Newton, and another one. There was 3 people that owned it before.
And if I read correctly, does the city currently have identified C2 properties that they can allocate in a comprehensive plan?
That would be a question for our attorney. I'll
Okay.
take that up with him at a later time.
I was just curious.
And the one lady that came here yesterday, she was upset about it. Her property, she's not even on the same street, and her property don't even join ours. She's on a totally different road, so I don't really think it would affect her. And I looked up for where her address was, and it shows that she's right beside commercial right now and industrial in front of her, and on a different road than we are. She's not even on the road we are.
And again, we're willing to leave a big buffer in between this project and
Whatever the city
the concern is.
what we're willing to do.
Council, at this time, I would ask if you have any questions of these gentlemen before we ask anyone else in the audience for their input.
How many acres is it, did you say?
3 point,
Oh, yeah, 3 points, so it's about 4 acres.
no,
And
there's
then what you
total
were
of-
saying were residential was,
28
plus.
acres.
Yeah.
There's 28 acres altogether.
altogether.
Like I said, it was C2 before at one time.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's anyone in the audience that wants to speak to this particular rezoning request, I would ask that you come forward at this time. If not, council, what's your pleasure? I entertain a motion at this point in time.
Mayor, I would leave in the public hearing, that's not necessary, but I would like to make a statement. As a property owner in proximity close to this development that's been proposed, I will be in the future, when there is a vote, I will be refusing as a property owner.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll make note of that. At this time, I'm going to close this session of the public hearing for this particular project. Now, we will take this up at our next meeting, which will be, what date is that?
Monday.
What date is that? Monday the 2nd. So tonight is the public hearing phase. This is the second public hearing, and then Monday night, we will have a council vote on it at that time. So thank you for attending. We appreciate your input.
Thank you.
And I will now close that session, and we will move on to our next item B. We're going to open a public hearing on item B to request to rezone parcels located off of Highway 15 from R1 residential to a planned unit development. The applicant requests that we table that. So I'm going to close that at this particular point in time, and we will move on to item C. Item C we're going to open a public hearing to request to rezone a portion of parcel 030A073 consisting of 49.13 acres located off of Philadelphia Road from RA residential to R3 residential. And we'll ask Lonnie Waters, if you will, please, to bring this to the council.
Mayor and council, again, we gather information and guidelines from comprehensive and future land use in our city ordinances. And on this particular project, based on the analysis of that application, using the standards and criteria found in section 94-246 of the zoning ordinance, staff recommends approval with conditions of the request to rezone the property from RA to R3, single-family attached units. It is expected that the applicant will comply with the following conditions. Should the mayor and council approve with a rezoning request, it is expected that the following minimum standards are demonstrated and meet as requested by staff during the appropriate approval process. If the current proposal does not meet the minimum standards, it is understood that the development plans will be altered to come into compliance. And you have a list of the items there that they will have to abide by and to meet if this goes forward. And again, this has been advertised, signage, articles in the paper, everything has been met. And we have not had people contacting us about this. We did receive one phone call that said that they'd like to see the cattle on the farm. But other than that, that's all we've had. So the applicant is here also to make a statement to you if you wish.
Thank you. Please come forward. State your name for everyone here.
Yeah, my name is Norman White. I'm the managing partner of Parcel Residential LLC. We're requesting a rezoning of this property to 270 townhouses. There will be two product lines. The first product is a 24-foot townhouse. It'll be about 1,700 square feet. And then the secondary part, there will be 144 of those, 126 30-foot homes that are attached by a shed built on a 40-foot lot. Those will range in square footage from 1,600 feet to 2,800 feet. The 24-foot townhomes will have 2.5 baths. These will have from 2.5 baths to 3.5 baths. And we think that the average sales price, in fact, we know the average sales price, the first group will be at $325,000. The production schedule, and did you all get a copy of, I think Shauna provided a copy of this.
Yes.
We worked out a production schedule. We agreed to do no more than 90 units a calendar year, understanding that there are some stress in the system with sewer, fire, and other services. So our schedule, we see us deliver the first 8 houses what was it, August? I can't remember. No, it's December of 2022, and then we'll finish the project in 2025.
Okay. Council, this will be the time to ask any questions we have of this developer. Mr. White, we'll answer all questions. So.
Will you clarify for me a little bit about the lot sizes and the square footage?
Yeah, there are two, you have a copy of this?
Yes.
You'll notice that there's two size lots. There's a 24-foot wide lot, which is the lot that is for this product, which is a 1,700 square foot house. And then we designed a 40-foot lot to build this 30-foot product and attach it with a shed to the rear. It'll actually look like a single-family house on the lot, but it is attached with a shed, so we're 10 feet apart. Does that answer the question?
Well, it begins at They're adjoined, correct?
Yes, they are joined for reasons.
That's it.
Okay, now when they divide these, is it going to be the shell, the foundation, or are you going to buy in the whole lot?
I'm sorry, I don't.
On the townhomes, there are 4 different kinds, some you just on the shell, some of you on the shell and the foundation, some of you on the shell, foundation.
No, this is, yeah, you'll own the lot and the house. Yes, that's right. Yes, it's a traditional ownership, yes, recent.
Council, any further questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, in consultation with legal and interpretation of our R3 zoning standards, it's in your packet, but I do want to make sure that the applicant and the public is aware that based on the criteria that we reviewed of the R3 standards with the attached product, the R3 has a detached single family, an attached, and then a multifamily component. The attached product, you take a 4,500 square foot to determine density in terms of the overall parcel size. With this being 49 and some change acres, the applicant has proposed a density of nearly about half of what the gross 4,500 square foot would arrive at. In addition, I believe you have stated that your 70 foot that is also identified as far as the building is because of the groupings of the sections, because they're not going to just be an all attached sea of 270. They're grouped in 3s or 4s or 6 or whatnot. So there's the 70 foot that we've interpreted as being in compliance as well. In the future, staff may look at all of our zoning districts. You may recall back in February we approved the zoning ordinance, but we did not really modify or alter the zoning districts. So the R3 has always been one that we've just looked at, tried to look at other locations to make sure that we're trying to be consistent. I believe the applicant has also confirmed that our interpretation, consultation with legal, is pretty well consistent with other jurisdictions. The only thing, if I could just sneak in a question.
Is this going to be hard?
No. And just to clarify, rather than a question, the 1,700 square feet proposed for the 24-foot wide,
yes.
Is that heated space?
Yes.
Okay.
So that all the square footage I quoted are heated space.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this at this time? If not, I will close that hearing and we will proceed to the next item on our agenda. Item D is discussion of American Rescue Plan and Georgia's Fiscal Recovery Fund application. And we're going to ask Brandon Douglas, our city manager, and our city clerk, who does many other things, to bring this to us. Beverly Brandon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And just if I could take a moment just to remind everyone in attendance, because it is still a relatively new process that we've begun this year. The requirement with regards to land use is our zoning ordinance. When someone petitions the city for a rezoning or an annexation, there's a public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission, that's the recommended body. Then there's a public hearing before the mayor and council, which you've all witnessed this evening. In return, it's transferred over to the regular council meeting. The next one, it happens to be Monday, whereas the 2 previous meetings we've had, there's been a little bit of a week or so to prepare. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that these matters will be on the agenda for Monday night for the mayor and council. Just still fairly new, just want to make sure everyone is aware. With regards to item D, Mr. Mayor and council, staff did want to provide an update. I believe from our last meeting, it was advised that we had received the proceeds probably within a matter of a day or two, that the funds have been deposited. Beverly will kind of get into that in just a moment, but I felt as though it was prudent to go ahead and just kind of update you on the information that has been put out there, which is nothing. So, sometimes it's important for the city to articulate that if there is questions from the community or from others, rather than to remain silent, I think it's prudent for us just to kind of walk through the phases that the U.S. Treasury promulgated the rules of how municipalities, states, etc. are to use the American Recovery Plan monies, the ARP monies. The interim final rule was basically closed to public comments, I believe July 16th. Georgia Municipal Association, National League of Cities, other partners of local governments, I'm sure ACCG did as well. They made some comments for consideration. Those comments will then be in turn processed, and then there'll be a final rule that it goes out to let places know what the monies can be utilized for. There's general guidance that's provided. We have spoken at times that the proceeds we have received were perhaps not as great as the millions and millions of other jurisdictions receive. It is tied to population, so it's relatively proportionate to our size, but not necessarily our needs. So we have at the staff level identified that the broad but narrow parameters that they've looked at is pay, specifically premium pay, raises, etc. for public safety personnel, with us having a police and fire department, with us implementing a pay scale adjustment recently. That in and of itself we think will be an eligible use that when we do a end of the year amendment or even a budget amendment prior to the audit next year, we could then allocate those monies accordingly once there's final rules on it. And basically it's just an accounting issue that we do have the monies. We can encumber the monies to say that this amount would go towards the pay essentially, leaving an appropriate amount that, if you recall, in our planning workshop in January, we identified the need to address living quarters in the fire department. So it is staff's intention to continue speaking with you all in public forums on if in fact we get a concept together on how to make some additions to the fire department to address living quarters, that in and of itself would be an eligible use, because right now we have 4 firefighters in a shift, and so the living accommodations need to be segregated out for each one having their own, just as a good practice for mitigating any COVID exposure in the future. So we feel as though that's an eligible, appropriate use. We don't have any monies allocated at this moment, other than thinking that if we put a placeholder in to encumber, then the balance of the monies would most likely be utilized in the water sewer fund. That is a broad, descriptive area, but the gist of it is public pay, public safety pay is a clear evidence use. Basically, the living quarters that I just talked about is not as easily spelled out, but we feel as though that's eligible. And then the water sewer infrastructure, and then broadband. So we're not in the telecommunications, so we don't necessarily have the broadband. And our private partners have done a really good job of continuing to move that needle forward. So with that, the state concurrently, so everything I just said, the state received some monies as well. And there's the Georgia Fiscal Recovery Fund application. They received an allocation of 2 years of over $4 billion. So about $2.4 billion is going to be allocated this year to the state of Georgia that can then be petitioned by local governments for grants. The grant period is open between August 1 and August 31. So I just told you that we don't necessarily know what exactly we can use the monies for. We have a pretty good idea, but no one's going to definitively say it until the final rule is put in place. So we have this pot of money that you're supposed to petition the state for, and it's kind of tied to those general categories. So we do have an August the 2nd meeting that we could conceivably seek y'all's approval for us to submit an application in August. Stormwater is clearly defined in both the ARP and the state criteria, because the idea is, for instance, we have stormwater intrusion, meaning it seeps into our sanitary sewer that goes to the sewer plant, that does clog up some of the ability for the plant is treating, instead of wastewater, stormwater. So we've spoken with our engineers. They're about like us with regards to what may be the most appropriate and best use for applying. There's just a very broad, general sheet that I can submit to y'all if y'all want to take a look at it. It just wants a project description. And our thought was to ask for whatever monies the engineers think that it would cost to either design and or to fix any stormwater intrusion. But I did want to at least, request the mayor if we could just, y'all had any comments, questions, issues with anything, just to kind of have this opportunity to talk about it.
Council?
So where does stormwater intrude?
That is what I asked, and that is what they said they would analyze and put a report together. Unfortunately, if Lonnie probably knows, so what we're probably going to do is ask Lonnie just to write it all down, and then get the engineers to design something.
You know, the news is always about extrusion, not intrusion.
Council?
It's a need, and whether they, we have no idea how much money is going to become available, but we got engineers looking at it and quit treating stormwater.
And it's probably been a little quiet because the way that they put this under not DCA or GDOT or DNR, they put it under the Office of Planning and Budgeting, I think, or OPB maybe, because that's where I think the proceeds were coming from. And so I do not know the limited time frame. I don't have all the answers. It's just, I felt as though it was appropriate for us to at least ask when we do know that there's an identified need that we had already identified as we need to mitigate. If they're going to, score this as an eligible project, then we felt as though that, why not?
Bottom line, you got a short time to get the application in. You're waiting on data. Let's take the best information we got and move on it.
And I will say, Mr. Mayor and Council, because we do have this as an advertised work session, special call meeting, Beverly has just some points, and I think she's got a request as well. And I'll just let her read off some of her notes since I can't read that far.
It's just some housekeeping, county housekeeping. When we applied for this park money, we were required to give them our general fund account, and that's where the money's landed. Well, we follow the uniform chart of accounts that comes from the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, and they have since, getting this money, come out with some guidelines of making sure that we segregate these monies, and we're to put the money we get in a fund 230 that has been designated the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 Local Fiscal Recovery Funds. In addition to that, we will need to open a checking account at the United Community Bank. Did I get that right? Yes. And the signers will be the same two signers that are on our electronic documents, and that's the mayor and the city manager. And as soon as we can, as soon as I can get a approval to open the checking account, we'll take care of that and move the money into that account.
Very good.
And how much money do we have?
$742,000.
I do not feel rich for some reason,
Right.
as a city that is.
Well, that's why I said our needs perhaps outpace the amount, but it is proportionate to our population, perhaps just not our real needs.
So one other quick question would be on the 2.4 billion that the state has, and I know that our timing is absolutely limited. Is there any other areas that we could apply for? As an example of a water line to an adjoining county or whatever?
There's a very large appropriations or infrastructure bill that's been proposed. There's all sorts of grants because the trillions, or the trillion, what was 1.8 trillion maybe, there's some direct allocations, and then there's some state grant monies, and then some federal grant monies. So we're going to identify as much as we can where there's minimal or no required match. You'll hear an update Monday on the TAP grant submission, where that is a established program through GDOT where there's a required 20%. When there is no required amount, any amounts that you put in is probably, it's not necessarily always, probably scored higher. So we would commit a portion of proceeds that we feel as though would give us a little bit of an advantage, but I would not feel comfortable throwing all of it towards one, because if it does happen, then it limits our ability to do other things that we need to do, which is already been identified. So any that we would do is, if it's a $350,000 request for the report and implementation of intrusion, we may recommend doing a 10 or 20% match at $35,000 to $70,000. Just as an example.
Okay.
And if it's y'all's pleasure, if we could seek a motion on the bank account.
Council, I would entertain a motion that we open up a bank account. Just 700,000 plus in it.
I move we open up a bank account at United Community Bank, Pickens County, with the designated signatures.
Got a motion, need a second, please?
Second.
Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No, the same, the motion carries. Let's proceed. Any further questions for our city manager? Yes, sir.
Mr. Douglas, it might be beneficial for us to work with one of our greatest partners, the county, in making sure that we're on the same page as far as the Georgia Fiscal Recovery application, to see if they are also in the same process and what they may be eligible for. If we do want to pursue a project that's not been outlined or created this time, that could open a new possibility.
Typically, does having partners and on a grant like that increase your chances of success? Or
Don't think it would hurt.
With this one, I have no idea. Under some scoring mechanisms, partnerships and leveraging other public dollars for a joint project does weigh a little better. So I'll refrain from what I was going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I told Chairman Stansel September 1 is the deadline, so that way they can get theirs in.
All right, any other questions? If not, we'll move to item E, which is our last item of the evening, and that's an update on the sidewalk project. Back when we had our retreat earlier, and I don't recall the date of that retreat, but it was, well, quite some time ago, we were very enthusiastic about looking at the possibility of putting sidewalks where needed And since that time, I think the paper has run an article about that with some potential thoughts on that matter. And so it looks like the community as a whole, and that includes the mayor, I want to definitely say that having the sidewalks done is something that I have really been pushing. We would not be good stewards of our money if in spending this money that we have, we did not take care of the repairs of the sidewalks that are out there. And I think that it's been quite some time since sidewalk repair has been addressed. So at this time, council, I wanted to ask you to see if we can authorize our city manager to put together a bid package for repair, and let's see what repairs to our existing sidewalks will run. And then from that, we will determine what we have left, and then we can prioritize that for new sidewalks. And I think that we all have some good ideas about where sidewalks be needed, but we need to take care of what we have first. So I'll ask for discussion on this. This is council's time to talk.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, augment those statements and just kind of, once again, put everything in context for the public and the council. July 13th of 2020, the first page that you have in your packet is the 2014 sidewalk project list preliminary that I think had been discussed some years back. So it was floated August of last year, it was suspended to allow the underground utility project Georgia Power to commence. And July 12th of this year, we just kind of reinstituted this list for you all to look at. And so as everything continues to evolve, we wanted to just kind of update you all tonight. The mayor kind of set in on a meeting with staff last week with the civil engineer as we kind of was continuing to do our due diligence about taking this list and how do you take this list and apply it with respect to making something happen. And so clearly this list, and I even admitted to the mayor, I didn't put a lot of due diligence into it. When Lonnie had talked with me last year about it, the July meeting was to approach it, then we suspended it, and then this past July, last month, or I guess rather this month, of July 12th, we just re-examined and said we're going to move forward with our due diligence. So the two parallel course we're looking at is the repair replacement. We feel as though that it probably is advantageous to identify areas through these areas identified from 2014 and say maybe the entire section is not required to be repaired or replaced. Maybe it's this section, or 50%, 70%, 10%, and that would help to mitigate the cost and any sort of design or engineering, because if you're just taking and replacing, repairing, you're not altering or modifying the existing conditions. So at least from a staff perspective, that's much more seamless. With respect to installing new, that is where you have to get into engineering for getting a design. First, you get the survey. They'll typically do a topographical survey, because one thing about this community and Jasper and First Mountain City is we ain't flat. So the civil engineer basically commented that under some typical situations, they create a typical section of design. And then you take that typical section and apply it throughout whatever, whether it's a road, a sidewalk, stormwater, etc. The one corridor from North Main Street to the Woodbridge area, Whitfield and Main, to the city limits, I've asked him to get us a design proposal for September, because quite candidly, his comment to me was that about every 10 feet, different sections, different topography, different features. And he said that is something that creates engineering challenges. that does create opportunities for added cost. So I wanted to make sure that you all were aware that the repair replace, we do want it to be very seamless, quick and easy. Get Lonnie and Adam to just kind of mark up over the next few weeks, different areas. You'll drive by and see them. You know, I wouldn't advocate, but if you wanted to spray paint what you thought, you know, you are the elected and,
Color.
yeah. So, well, get with him in terms of the next thing, from a locate perspective.
I need 5 different colors.
Yeah, I'm out of my element, so whatever. They don't give me any tools to work with. But that is kind of what we want to do, is then have the contractors go and look, put together a package of just a, you know, cut out, replace, cut out, replace. Hey, we got to go back to this joint and cut out. You didn't include it, but I did. Great. Give a little bit of the flexibility. The new is going to be more challenging. I think the first proposal for North Main Woodbridge to the city limits would perhaps be startling to some in terms of what the surveying and design cost is going to be. And quite candidly, that might be a phased project of implementation. But to get to that point, we need to know what the cost is going to be, as the mayor said, to take care of what we got. So on your list as well, we did put along Pioneer Road, Court Street, where the court parking area is, to City Park, and perhaps do a crosswalk over. Right now, the sidewalk's coming off the top field. It goes around. The topography is too steep to connect there, and then it kind of terminates around the field. The sidewalk ends at the parking lot, extend it down, do a crosswalk to City Park. That would be new. Probably not that extensive of a design. Same way with Cove Road. You'll notice that we have sidewalks existing on Burnt Mountain on the school side. Originally, we had thought, well, let's put sidewalks on this side where we don't have any. But I think what staff's idea and the narrative we want to kind of help create is areas that have existing sidewalk, let's repair it. Areas that don't have sidewalk, let's address it. There are some areas on here, like East Church Street, that has sidewalk on both, that may be our advantage to repair both sides. Just wanted to put this out there, clarify this will be hopefully on your September 13th agenda with respect to maybe some sort of estimation of the repairs, the engineer's call for design. So I didn't just want to spring it on you and mislead you or the community in what the real expectations could be.
We need to also keep in mind, and this is for the community as a whole also, that Georgia Power is not doing, and we won't be doing any work on sidewalks until they find and leave our city. So the latest estimate that I have, and you cannot hold me to this, is October. Now, if they finish in October, I'm going to be happy with that. If they don't, I'm not going to be surprised. So we'll see how this goes, but you don't have to have things that we as a city don't want sidewalks. We certainly do. You know, I've been wanting that since a year and a half ago, but we're still getting there. We will get there and we'll get it done.
And one of the things we got to recognize is when the contractor leaves an area, they're already repairing sidewalks that they have damaged.
Look it over.
And there's a good chance we're going to be tearing out some of their repairs to upgrade it for the new project. Anything we can do to mediate that would be.
I don't see much of a possibility until after they finish. And then what I would like to do is ask them for a large check. We'll see if that works out or not, but
Thankfully, we're getting to the point we can at least dream of getting them repaired.
I want to make sure the public understands, and the mayor and council as well, that even though we talk about SPOS 2014, this is a new project. This is not something that we've had on the back burner for 7 years. This is something that we had talked about in our May, I believe it was May, planning session. And then it's kind of spun off because of Georgia Power. The other thing, this estimate here, even though I'm not at all holding you to it, but at least it looks like with what we are suspecting that we still have the ability to do quite a bit of this project.
Well, and part of it is, and just for the audience, last year we had, and to further, I guess, add some explanation what Dr. Proctor was stating, I believe the identified monies from 2014 SPLOST was to resurface city streets. I believe that had been accomplished at the end of 2019. So then in 2020, we said the remaining monies would be utilized for the sidewalks. And that's how this list has been generated. So there's a carryover balance of about $800,000 in 2014 SPLOST that upon the original estimate of cost, I have no confidence that this, because we didn't touch this, we just did this just to re-show again. I'm really hesitant to even put anything in 2021 with respect to what even a repair replace. But talking with the engineer last week, who knows? It might be 150, 200, 300, 400, but we didn't want to bite off more than we can chew until we know what the repairs are. But Lonnie, anything inaccurate?
No, sounds like everything's been covered. The only comment I've got is citizens of Jasper, we've been talking about sidewalks for the last 5 years. And they have really worked well with us and understood what's going on. And along with, I'm sure the rest of the staff here and the council appreciates what they've, accepted that we were trying to accomplish. And the biggest thing is on the repairs. And Jim, something you said about where the construction company is pouring new sidewalks. Well, if what they pour is a good section of sidewalk, then that will not be in the repair. The new sidewalks will be where they have put in underground utilities. The repairs are just like Arbor Hill has several sections where 2 joints have pushed up like that. The repairs are going to be fixing things like that, or where the sidewalk has deteriorated and crumbled up.
Yeah, I guess where it would hurt more is in replacement
Yes,
of some
yes,
sidewalks.
yes. And we'll be doing all that in sections. And so,
I hear you.
they could actually help us with this if they're working in areas that are deteriorated. So they could actually replace places that we need to replace. So, I mean, it could be beneficial. Sure.
And if we've had conversations with either you or Lonnie about areas that citizens have brought to us, we need to do that again, just to verify that.
Yeah, and part of what as this may sound a little unusual to hear me say, but as structured as we all try to make things, there are some things like this where I wanted to simplify and not become too cumbersome, because from a design perspective of new, installation of new, yes, that's a process. This, it could be as simple as talking to Adam and Lonnie. We see something and maybe it's a section that is pretty isolated, but if we've already got a mobilized person coming, because I hope we have several vendors that are interested that would go and physically look at all the different areas, get us a good price and quote, and then that way we've at least addressed what we already have. So yes, sir, I'm not completely married to just, no, we're not over there in that area. It could be far off, but once we get them here on a contract, and we set the terms of this period of time, then I would hope that they just all cut it out and form it up, pour it, and move on.
Well, I told you this today, I don't want to say it publicly. I appreciate the fact that there is process and planning going into this, rather than just on a Monday morning deciding we're going to send a crew out and do part of this ourselves or whatever. And I think sometimes the public doesn't fully understand in the year 2021 for a municipality what is involved in just about every single thing that we do. Not only to do it right for economic reasons, but for safety and lastability and all those things that the game has changed, and I appreciate your ability to organize it. So.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Any other comments by council on this? I would entertain a motion that we ask staff to move forward with compiling all of the necessary repairs into a bid package.
So, second.
And a second, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And staff is corrected, thank you. Before we adjourn, I will ask anyone here, if you have anything to bring before our city, now would be a good time to talk to us. If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.